My apologies for all the most probable noise that you're gonna hear in this video because my child is here with me and he has to be kept entertained. This is Cacao, by the way. Let's show them your beautiful face. Cacao. Anyway. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So if you're new here, my name is Andrea and I'm a music photographer based in London and I do videos mostly about that. Before I get into the video, please make sure that you like and subscribe and all of those YouTubey things. It helps the video get out there so then more people can see it, so it just helps the channel in general. So yeah, I really appreciate it. So as you can see by the title of this video is going to be about how to shoot live concerts, live bands, or live gigs, however you want to call it. If you're just starting out, I always recommend people to start shooting at smaller venues as opposed to like bigger, larger concerts, because not only is it way easier to get access to them, a lot of the times they're free, a lot of the times they don't require a photo pass, so you can just bring your camera without having to have permission for it. So in general, there's just way more leniency involved, whether it be on flash usage or the duration that you're allowed to shoot for. Usually you can shoot the whole gig. Even to this day, even having both shot a lot at smaller venues and at bigger venues, I always prefer the smaller venues. It's just a way more fun and intimate, way easier to also meet people, like make friends, speak to the band and network with other photographers and stuff. I think there's pretty much only pros to small venues, really. So I always recommend people to start off by shooting there first, because on bigger venues I feel like there's way more stress involved, there's a lot more rules, it's hard to speak to people, especially if you're at a photo pit. You're pretty segregated from the rest of everyone that's there. You can probably speak to other photographers, but I feel like people are way more serious in those scenarios and it's not really a very social event as much as it is on smaller venues and stuff. So like I mentioned before, on smaller venues, it's way easier to have access to them. You won't need a photo pass most likely. On bigger venues, that's the complete opposite. You will most definitely probably need a photo pass. And there are a few different ways to get one. I have a whole video on my channel where I talk about photo passes, what they are, and how you can get them. I'll link it down below. But basically for larger venues, you will need a photo pass. And that can be a little bit limiting for people with limited experience. But in a very short summary, your best bet on getting one is either by shooting for a publication. Tô filmando, já vou! It's either shooting for a publication or getting in touch with the band themselves. Again, this gets exponentially harder depending on the size of the band. If it's a very popular band, you most likely won't be able to get direct contact with them. You can contact their management and stuff. But again, I have a whole video on that and it's down below. This is a pretty obvious tip, but definitely get there on time. You want to try and reduce stress as much as possible, so definitely get there on time and definitely, make sure that everything that you have is charged. Bring extra batteries if you need, bring a second camera if you want. Just make sure that you're as prepared as you can be. One of the first things I learned from personal experience from shooting concerts is to always pay attention to the rhythm on stage, because that makes all the difference. I think shooting concerts is a lot about timing and capturing the right moment. So if you can anticipate movement, then your odds of getting a good photo are much higher. So you can do this by anticipating dance movements that you see on stage, like if the performers, if the artists, musicians have a certain rhythm to their step, you can follow, the rhythm of the drums as well. Another really important thing to pay attention in regards to timing is the lighting on stage, especially I feel like in bigger venues. This also happens in smaller venues, but as we all know, bigger venues have way more lights and they move around, they go up and down, so it's good for you to it's important to try and time your photos to the lights on stage, because sometimes they'll glare right into your lens and you get a lens flare and you can't see anything in the photo. So you have to like work smart with your timing. Another thing that you can do is research the band that you're going to shoot. Like for example, look up a set that they have on YouTube or whatever, so that you can kind of get a feel for basically just their cues in general. Do they do something interesting when they play a certain song? Just so that you can kind of anticipate their quirks and their patterns that can really help you prepare to capture the shot at the right time and for you not to miss any good opportunities. Personally, I kind of enjoy the element of surprise a little bit. It keeps me on my toes, it keeps me excited. Obviously I like to be prepared. I'd like to, you know, always have my gear with me, charged. I'll always be there in time. If I need a photo pass, I'll have a photo pass. But I love being sort of surprised by the band a little bit. So I kind of enjoy that adrenaline of not knowing what to expect. But I think it's definitely valuable to do research beforehand if you feel, you know, a bit insecure about shooting in general. Not to say that I'm super confident. It's just, I just find it more fun to kind of be a little bit surprised as you shoot. Yeah. This is also a very basic point, but I think it's also important to mention it here briefly. Always be beware of the first 3 song rule, sort of this like unspoken rule where, and again, especially at bigger venues, where you're only allowed to shoot the first 3 songs of the concert, and then you're expected to either leave the venue or just leave the photo pit in general. And as you can imagine, that adds a whole new layer of stress because of the time restraint. And again, another reason why I love smaller venues even more. But if you do have to deal with the 3-song rule, just make sure that you're smart with your time. Make sure you get as many different angles as you can, as quickly as you can, and save up the photos that you can take from outside of the pit for later. Always prioritize the first moments of the concert so that you can maximize your chance of getting some good shots before you're kicked out. Not all performers reinforce this rule. I think it is a bit of a case-by-case scenario, but it is also sort of the ground rule. Again, so there are exceptions. There are performers that let you shoot the whole gig. There are performers that especially if you're able to speak to them beforehand, that they allow you to use flash, which is sort of my aesthetic. So it's very important to me to try and be able to use flash when I can. So again, there are exceptions to every rule, and try and be as informed as you can to those exceptions before you go shoot. So like I mentioned before, again, this is at bigger venues. I think I might try and make a video just dedicated to comparing smaller and bigger venues. Let me know if you'd like to see that in the comments down below, because I feel like I'm doing a lot of it in this video, and I feel like I could probably make a dedicated video for it with a few more details, so let me know. But anyway, so at bigger venues, you most likely won't be able to use flash. So you have to be really well equipped to shoot in low light settings. So make sure that you try to optimize your equipment for those conditions as much as you can. A fast lens with like a low aperture. Usually low aperture lenses are quite expensive. You don't need a super low f-stop, but it definitely does help. But there's other ways to work around that. You can play a little bit with your ISO, but again, when you really increase the ISO, you're more likely to get loads of noise on your photos. So it's just basically a game of adapting. Every setting that you have on your camera influences the other settings. So it's kind of hard to grasp your mind around it. Again, I can make a video about this as well. But basically the 2 main things you need to focus on when you're shooting live concerts are lighting and movement. So you need to prioritize the settings on your camera that kind of mess around with that the most. And in my opinion, that's the aperture and that's the shutter speed. Something else that can really help you too is using a wide lens, because a lot of the times when you're shooting at concerts, you're very up close to the stage and you don't have a lot of space to fit in things in the frame. And by having a wide lens, you can fit more stuff in it. But again, personally, it's not really my aesthetic, but I can see how it's helpful and I can see how a lot of people like it. The problem for me is that it distorts a lot of things on stage, because in order for it to fit more things into the frame, it shrinks it in, sort of like a fisheye situation, and it's not my personal favorite. But again, it is helpful, especially when you're that close to the stage. So that's also something to consider. I also have a video on my channel where I talk about why gear doesn't matter that much, so go watch that if you feel a little bit confused or pressured about getting the right gear for concerts. You don't need the best things out there. You just need to know how to work with what you have, and go watch that down below as well if you're interested. Another very, very big advice that I have for you is to practice shooting in low lights, like in your room or in your house, so that you can experiment without that pressure, that time constraint of being at a concert. Try and like set up something in your room, either, you know, ask your flatmate to come to your room, or your dog or anything, like just something that moves, because I think, like I said, one of the main things you need to focus on is movement in the low light. So try and simulate a sort of concert scenario in your room, like make sure that the lights are very dim, and then have something move around and try and capture that subject the best way that you can, and experiment with aperture, see what that does to the movement and the lighting. Experiment with your shutter speed, see what that does to the movement and lighting. I think it's very helpful to experiment for hours on end before you go to a concert, because like I said, a lot of the time you have a 3-song limit, and if you're experimenting there, you probably won't get the best results. Or you might, if you get like a good photo by accident. I just think that there's a lot of value in experimenting before you go to the gig. Another quick note that I have here is beware of smoke and flash. You know how a lot of concerts have smoke machines? Don't try and use flash when there's smoke around, because it will just reflect on the smoke. So you basically will have just like a white photo. It's gonna look like you just shot like a cloud in the sky. You won't be able to see anything. I learned this from personal experience. I think like smoke and lighting are very challenging. I think I touched on this a little bit earlier in the video. Try and take some photos from different perspectives. A lot of very iconic concert photography is taken from behind the crowd, so you get to see the whole sort of scene. You get to see the stage, the lights, the crowd. Those can be very impactful. You can also, if you're at a closed venue, usually there might be like seats upstairs, and you can try and shoot from above, also with the crowd. This is something that a lot of people do on bigger venues, because after the 3-song limit, they have to exit the photo pit at the front. But sometimes they're not necessarily kicked out of the venue, and they can just stay in the venue and watch the gig. And some people like to use that time to take the photos from... No, isso não é vídeo. Mas que é isso, simplesmente? Sorry, my dog was eating the bed spread. Yeah, he's still sort of a puppy, so you gotta keep an eye out. Where's your chicken? A lot of photographers use that time after the 3-song limit to go and shoot from different angles around the venue. And on that angles note, I think it's very important for you to always try and get as many different angles as you can when you're shooting a concert, because that adds more variety to your shots. It can kind of increase the lifespan of your shoot, because if you get loads of different images from the same night, you can use it again and again, and it won't become super repetitive. So always try and have as many variations as you can. And my very last tip for now, let me know if you guys would like a part 2 to this, but my very last tip for now, oh my god, is to always retain your copyright when possible. You should always fight for your work and try to be in control of your work whenever you can. Depending on your shooting contract or your shooting situation, when you're shooting for a publication, a lot of the times they want to retain the right to the photos like forever, and make sure that you read the contract properly and that you request to them a time frame for... I can't concentrate. Like a limit to the time that they have exclusive access to your photos, so that you eventually can regain access and use those photos for other things. You sort of have to negotiate that a little bit. I can also make a video about contracts and negotiations and stuff like that. Let me know if you would be interested in the comments down below. And I think this is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was somewhat helpful. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below, what you'd like to see next. And thank you so much for watching. Leave a like if you liked it, subscribe, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye bye.